Right, but it's had no effect really on the raw numbers of people coming in, which remains enormous. Let me read you what Michael Gove said about that. He said that the latest announcement for the Treasury's official admission that if we stay in the EU, then immigration will continue to increase by hundreds of thousands year on year. More than 250,000 people came to Britain from Europe last year. As long as we are in the EU, we cannot control our borders. And that is all factually true, isn't it?
Well, actually, control of our borders and immigration policy are two different things. Crucially, inside the European Union, we're not part of this area that's called the Schengen area. What does that mean?
Sure.
It's a border-free zone that a number of countries have.
I understand
We
that.
have control of our borders, so we can decide...
We don't have control of our borders, Home Secretary. People living inside the EU can come and move in here as and when they want, as they do in huge numbers every single year. That's not control of our borders.
Now, Andrew, you are conflating immigration policy and free movement with control of our borders. People are checked.
I think right.
Control of our borders means we can stop people entering the United Kingdom, which we can. But crucially, we can only do that if we've got the information we need to have.
We can't stop members of the citizens of other EU countries from coming to the UK.
We can make judgments about people and whether they should be coming into the United Kingdom. That's why it's important. We have control at our borders. We have checks at our borders.
Okay.
So, but what matters for us to be able to stop people who we don't want to see coming into the United Kingdom, criminals,
Oh, I see.
terrorists,
You can stop
suspects.
a few criminals on the edges, but you can't stop the vast majority of people coming in, and that is not control of our borders.
No, this is very important, actually, Andrew, in these arguments.
Yeah.
Because control of our borders, when you say we don't have control of our borders, it suggests that everybody can just walk into the UK. That is not the case. We check people at our borders. But what matters at the border is that you have the information about people that enables you to make that decision about whether somebody should enter the UK or not. We are more likely to have that information if we're inside the European Union, working with other countries in Europe, and have access to the various tools, the various things. These are, I can get jargonistic about the names.
Please don't get jargonistic. But I come back to the basic point. The vast majority of people can come in as of right and do as of right. And you're saying that there are some people who are criminals, and because of our relationships with other EU countries, we know who they are. But that's only the case if they have done something really heinous and they have been flagged in advance. Mostly they will just walk straight through.
No, nobody... I don't know when the last time you went through one of our airports, for example, and came back into the UK. You probably had your passport checked or went through an E-gate.
They looked at my passport, thank you, Mr. Marr, and
people are... Well, you're obviously a person in utmost integrity. But what is important, the point I'm making, Andrew, is I think a very simple one, but I think it's important as people are coming up to this decision that we are very clear about some of these arguments. There is an issue about free movement, about the free movement rules, about what that allows people to do. As I say, as part of the negotiation, we have negotiated changes which help us in terms of dealing with abuse of free movement, which reduce the pull factor of our welfare benefit system.
Okay.
There is then a separate issue about whether or not we can check people coming into the country. And that's why I'm saying we shouldn't conflate those two issues. They are separate.
If I may make 2 points on the second of those. We have stopped, I think, about 6,000 people since 2010 from the EU coming into this country. That's way less than 1%. And second, if we were outside the EU, there would be a visa system, so we'd know much more about who was coming in.
Well, first of all, we don't know what the system would be if we were outside the EU. That's one of the uncertainties.
Wouldn't you like a visa system as Home Secretary?
We don't know what the system would be because that's one of the uncertainties. But you say that actually we have stopped people coming from the European Union at the border. One of the other things we've negotiated in the deal is actually making it easier for us to stop people. It's about the definition of criminality. We've made it easier. We'll be able to stop more people. We'll be able to deport more people as a direct result of the deal that David Cameron negotiated.
And yet, when it comes to the couple in Wolverhampton who were bludgeoned to death by somebody who had come in, and many more cases in the newspapers, you have no control over who people are until they commit an offence, until they commit a crime. And in terms of people coming in who are flagged, they have to have done something absolutely appalling before they can come in. Judges have been saying, are we now in the situation we can't send people back if they've been, we can't stop people from coming in if they've been child molesters, if they've been child killers. The system is simply not working.
Well, there is no doubt that we need to do more in exchanging criminal records. But I also have no doubt that we're not going to be better exchanging those criminal records through the systems that are available if we're outside the European Union. Actually, it's being inside the EU that gives us access to, I mentioned the jargon earlier, things, they're called SIS2, ECRIS. This is about ensuring at the border we've got the alerts, that we can exchange criminal records. These are important tools. They're tools that are shared within the European Union.
Because we've got free movement.
No, they're tools. I think it's important that we're able to stop people coming into the UK who we don't want to have in the UK, regardless of where they are coming from, and that we can work with others to do that inside the European Union. We have a number of systems that we are members of that help us to do that. It is easier to exchange that information, it's easier to have access to that information inside the European Union than it would be outside the EU.
3 million people coming in by 2030. Good thing or bad thing?
First of all, that was an independent estimate. Secondly, I've already said I think immigration is too high and we need to control immigration.
Well, it came from the ONS, the Organisation of National Statistics.
Which is independent of government.
Well, yeah, but it's an official figure, and they say another 3 million people. No reason to think they're wrong. This is the system that has developed and happened on your watch, and looking ahead, it's going to carry on as it has been in the past. I'm asking you, good thing or bad thing? It's a bad thing, surely, from your
I think immigration is too high. I think that's, and we need to control it. That's what we're working at. But as I said earlier, and I return to this because it's an important point, controlling immigration is hard. It is something that you constantly have to be dealing with, constantly have to be looking to see what new measures we need to take, constantly looking at changing the rules. We've changed some of the rules on free movement as a result of the negotiated deal. We need to keep looking at what we need to change to ensure we can have the control we want.
But people watching this programme, wondering how to vote, will conclude from this that if they want immigration to come down dramatically and in real terms, we should be outside the EU. They look forward to a situation where our national living wage is going to be £9 an hour, and the equivalent figure in Bulgaria, for instance, is less than £1, 90-odd p an hour. People are going to be drawn into this country, as they have been, for very, very good human reasons, in very large numbers, so long as we remain in the EU.
Well, first of all, can I just answer the national living wage?
That's very basic.
No, can I just answer the national living wage point? Because you raised it earlier, and I said I would come back to it and wasn't able to. I think, yes, obviously the national living wage is going up, and people look when they're looking to move at what they're going to be able to earn. Sure. But of course, what we have at the moment is we see people in the UK, migrants coming in to take jobs that people in the UK aren't taking. And of course, one impact of the increased living wage, the national living wage, could be that more people here resident in the UK take some of these jobs. But when people are looking at the vote on the 23rd of June, this is not a single issue vote in terms of they need to look, as I have done. What I have done is looked across a range of issues and a range of challenges that the UK will be facing. And this is not a question on the 23rd of June of whether we can survive outside the European Union. It's a question of what is best for Britain's future. And I think if we look at the challenges we will face, the challenges of security, of trade and the economy, that actually looking ahead, Britain's prosperity, the opportunities for people living here in the UK will be more secure, will be better if we're inside the European Union.
That's your journey, but as part of that, and your particular responsibility has been mass migration. And what you're saying to people really is over the next 10 or 20 years, if we vote to stay in, that carries on at roughly the same. But you haven't been able to give me any reasons why it wouldn't.
Well, Andrew, what I've said is very simple. That in dealing with the migration issue, you have constantly to be looking at the steps that you can take in order to deal with that. We have shown that you can take steps that reduce migration. It's now gone back up again. And we need, and that's why we're bringing further measures in through a new Immigration Act. But when people look at this, the question is what is right for Britain's future? Where will our prosperity best be most secure? I think that is inside the European Union. And this is not, it's not a black and white decision.
We have heard this weekend, it's a very important weekend, I think, in this debate. We've heard President Obama tell us that we will be at the back of the queue when it comes to trade. That could be 5 to 10 years, he said in Hugh Edwards' interview. That, to a lot of people, feels a rather sad and diminished moment for this country, that an American president comes over here and tells us what to do and tells us to pay attention to him. We are not the great, proud, independent country we like to think we are. We are being pushed around by the Americans again. And the British Prime Minister is nodding his head as it's going on.
Now, look, let's just look at what President Obama actually said and did. What he said was, lots of people are talking about the sort of trade deal that the UK could have with the United States if it was outside the European Union. As President of the United States, he said he would tell us what his view was, how he saw it, how he saw the facts from his point of view. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
But you knew before he came over what he was going to say, surely.
Well, it's not the first time it's been said by the American administration. US Trade Representative had said it before. So this is an issue that obviously they're setting out the facts as they see them. And I think if we're talking about, people say you can leave the EU, you can have trade deals with various countries like the United States, like Commonwealth countries. Actually, it's right that we listen to those countries and what they're saying about that.
Don't you think, though, if you were a Leave or a Brexit voter and you looked at today's paper and there are the Obamas and the royal family and Prince George, and there's President Obama playing golf in the golf buggy with David Cameron, and there's President Obama being interviewed by Hugh Edwards on the BBC, you would say this is an absolute establishment classic stitch-up. This is the big people ganging together to try and bully voters into reclaiming their country. Against reclaiming their country.
Every individual voter who goes to vote in the referendum on the 23rd of June will have a very important decision to take about our future. I think we have a positive, optimistic future inside the European Union. I think our prosperity will be more secure. I think looking across the issues of security, trade and the economy, all of these, I think, say to me, as Home Secretary, and obviously I've been dealing with some of those issues over the last 6 years, say to me that we are better off inside the European Union. And I think people will listen to what is being said by our friends and allies, will want to see the facts. President Obama said, here's from his point of view, as President of the United States, a fact about a trade deal between the United Kingdom and the United States.
So what did you make of Boris Johnson's comments about President Obama?
Well, I'm very clear that I think President Obama is perfectly reasonable for him to come over and to set things out in the way that he sees them.
You don't think there is a visceral dislike of the history of British imperialism playing as part of this story?
I think President Obama was being just very clear with people. People talk about this trade deal with the United States. Here I am as president of here he was as President of the United States saying, this is how I see it, these are the facts as I see them. And I think people will take that on board, and then they'll make their judgments looking across the whole range of issues that they need to consider when they're making the decision whether to vote to be in or out.
The Labour MP, Gisela Stewart, has written to you today, with many others, asking you not to allow Marine Le Pen into this country because of the history of the views of her party and so forth, and the danger of public disorder in the final stages of this campaign. Will you pay attention to that? What will you do? Well,
I never talk about individual decisions, but what I would say about that is actually, contrary to what I think you were trying to say earlier, Andrew, I think the fact that she's written to me to suggest that I should stop somebody coming in to the country rather does suggest we have control of our borders.
Well, it depends. You could maybe be able to control Marine Le Pen, but there's still the hundreds of thousands of others. Anyway, we've had that argument. One other thing.